I'll just hand over the time to Melissa and Shafin.
Thank you, Audrey. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. My name is Shafin, and I'm going to be speaking with you for the next little bit with my colleague, Melissa. So today we're going to spend the next little while talking about a topic that's really important to the both of us. And it's about how you can actually be the best version of you. It's about how you can bring the best of yourself, how you can curate the best of yourself and show up more powerfully in a professional setting and provide a greater contributions to a professional workplace to further develop yourself and provide value to an organization. But before we do that, we're going to introduce ourselves. So I'll hand over to Melissa to introduce herself briefly and talk about her career journey and her highlights. Melissa?
Thank you, Shafin. Can you guys hear me, hopefully? Hello, Good morning, everybody. So fantastic to kind of meet all of you kind of virtually. I can't see you all at once, but it's great that you're here. So just a bit about me. So I commenced my career a very, very long time ago. In fact, I'm a bit embarrassed to even say it because probably most of you weren't even born. But 1996, I started at EY. So I did a Bachelor of Law and Commerce at the University of Adelaide, and I've seen a lot of EY because I started in the audit area, and after about a year, I then moved into insolvency. So I worked there for another year or so, and then I actually moved from Adelaide to Melbourne with EY, and I worked in an area called litigation consulting, which was really interesting, and that really involved kind of applying some of my law background and quantifying damages claims in litigation. I did that for a little while, and then in 2000, and I remember that because that was the year of the Sydney Olympics, so that helps me anchor. I moved into the corporate finance team, which is now what's called strategy and transactions, and I did valuation and due diligence work, and I had 3 kids along the way, and today I'm focused really on valuations entirely, so valuing businesses and shares for tax and accounting and strategic purposes. So that's me.
Great, thank you, Melissa. A little bit about me. I grew up in Sydney, and growing up, I was a bookworm and I wanted to become a journalist. Specifically, I would sit there and watch SBS and ABC News, and I wanted to become a reporter like Jan Event. Now, most likely, again, none of you know who Jan Event is, and it's showing my age. But I wanted to become a journalist, so I went to UTS and I did an arts in communication degree. My first year, I realized the word on the ground was that to become a journalist, you basically had to make coffee and tea for other journalists for a long, long time before they let you write your own piece. And I thought, I don't have time for that. So I kind of had my first little career or movement or alignment in my head there, and that was the first of many. And that's one thing you'll realize as you go through your career, that it's not always a upward progression. Sometimes it'll be sideways as well. So from there, I did a degree in communications, majoring in knowledge management, not having a really clear idea at the time of what knowledge management was. I then started work at KPMG in their tax area. I then I did 3 years of that, and then moved to Deloitte and did 5 years of knowledge management, focusing on technology transformations. I then did another 2 years at Nous Group in Canberra as their national knowledge manager, which was a lot about managing online and IT platforms, SharePoint, Microsoft, vendor management, that kind of thing. That was when I moved to Canberra, got married. And then, yeah, now I've been at EY 4 years as a management consultant, working across multiple federal government departments on large-scale transformations, focusing on strategy, customer experience, and obviously technology. So as you can see, it has been a bit of a shift, a bit of a move. And yeah, it's all about how you think about your career progression. Again, not just upwards, but sideways as well. And who do you surround yourself with to be able to make the right decisions? So let's have a discussion about that. If we move on to the next slide, please, Audrey. This PowerUp session, why is it important? Why do we focus on coaching women? I guess this tool, and this is a tool because you can take it away and remember it and reiterate it to yourself. It came about because we're all really just striving to build a better working world at EY. I know it sounds cliched, but we actually really are. And our leadership team and our coaching team is actually committed to building better leaders. And building better leaders that represent our society properly means building better female leadership. And so the tool was created, and it was based on many years of experience, collaborative and collated experience of women around EY, and observing the key behaviours that can either diminish power or build power within someone. And it applies to women at all levels who are striving to enhance their performance. So I like presenting this session because it's a good reminder to myself as well. Melissa, did you want to add anything there?
Well, look, it might be a bit silly, but some people might say, you know, why do we focus on women? Don't all people matter? As an analogy to, you know, the all lives matter versus the Black Lives Matter, right? So why do we focus on women? Why don't we do this across the board? And I think it's exactly it's a similar analogy. Is we have to, you know, we have to acknowledge that there is bias against women in the workplace and has been for many years, and it's going to take a long time for us to unwind that bias. So we need to acknowledge it, we need to be upfront about it, and we need to make sure that we focus on developing women and their leadership skills. And it's not about doing this at the expense of ignoring men, but it's about acknowledging that we are coming from a position, you know, not a privileged position like men in the workplace, and we need to work hard to kind of redress that balance or imbalance.
Absolutely. And if you look at some statistics, when you look at companies globally, you know, less than 30% of the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies are women. And specifically in Australia, it's actually not projected, it won't be till 2039 for women to reach parity in key management personnel roles. So when we talk about, you know, all lives matter, Black Lives Matter, or all you know, why is this specifically for women? It's because we have started the game behind, and we do want to focus, and EY does recognize that and wants to focus on building the empowering women to be able to help us achieve that, hopefully before 2039. So if we move on to the next slide, this is really, if you don't take away anything else from the next little while, please take away this. This is what we mean by having a little tool to yourself, because you can actually remember this, memorize this, and iterate this to yourself. We really, the skills that we said that we kind of, you know, observed and collated from our leaders is about projecting confidence authentically, you know. So there's so many times where, you know, people say, oh, I just fake it till I make it. I don't feel confident, but I walk into a room, I plaster a smile on my face, and I pretend it's fine. And sometimes that's what you have to do to begin with, right? If you don't have any other skills and experience. So I'm going to share something with you. My very first day at KPMG, I was still in my second year at university, and it was the start of a 2-week work experience. And I thought that I was being very proactive by walking in and trying to get into the building myself, and actually locked myself into fire stairs. And I sat in the fire stairs. It's 8:45. I know I have to report at 9 o'clock. And I sat there crying because I knew that I had to call someone to get me out of the fire stairs, but it would be a blow to my confidence because I just made a mistake, I thought, you know, before I'd even started the job. So there are things that you do, and it's just life that will have an impact on your confidence. It's about how do you overcome those things, and how do you actually make sure that you feel like, you know, I belong here, I deserve to be here, I have something to offer to this company, to this network, to this organization, and use that feeling to empower yourself to project confidence that is authentic. What do you say, Melissa?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. My little light bulb moment, a few years ago, I had to attend a board meeting of a listed company. So it was quite a big deal. I'd never been to a board meeting like that before, and I was very nervous about presenting. And I was kind of thinking, you know, these are directors, you know, they've got years of business experience. Oh my goodness, do I really belong here? So it was a real kind of imposter phenomenon that I was experiencing. And, you know, once I got into that room and I listened to those directors talk to each other, I realized I knew just as much as they did. Like, clearly, I had, you know, I could add value. I shouldn't doubt myself. And that was a really eye-opening moment. And I think that comes with experience, that, yeah, you'll get to a point where you realize you know just as much, even more about certain things than other people, and it gives you every right to speak, and you can add a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. I think we actually have more slides to go through that we'll go into these in detail. But really, if you run through them, it's projecting confidence with authenticity, owning your career, widening your network, elevating your communication, and realizing your purpose. And once you do all of those things, and again, it will take time, it's not something that happens overnight, you will be able to power up, hopefully, as a confident female leader. So we talked a bit about this projecting your confidence authentically. And it reminds me really of this quote from a very favorite or beloved author of mine, Oscar Wilde, who says, "Be yourself because everybody else is taken." And it takes a long time to realize that, and it takes a long time to actually action that, especially in this world of sort of homogeneity where you have Instagram and YouTube and people doing makeup where we all actually end up looking the same because we're doing the same kind of makeup, we're wearing the same kind of clothes. How do you authentically be yourself? And it's about recognizing and listening to what's coming from the inside and letting that express, whether it's, you know, in your clothes, whether it's in your communication, whether it's in the way you carry or express yourself. Yeah, so and before we go on to the next part, does anyone have anything that they want to share with us? I did want to do a little exercise, but in the interest of time, I think we'll just call out if anyone has anything, any stories to share about projecting confidence.
We've got Hannah.
Hi, yes. So one really good example I was told by a very wise woman once was, if you are ever in a room or even in an event where it's time for questions, and either you're at the beginning of an event where you're introducing yourself or answering a question at the end of an event, she told me, stand up to introduce yourself or stand up to ask your question. And often you see in a room, a lot of men will sort of stand up and be more present and take up space and project their voice loudly and introduce their name and pause. And just that tiny little action can make such an impression of how you are projecting your confidence. So I thought of that example for this particular slide.
That's a really good tip. Thank you for sharing that. So, and I guess that's another way you could actually do the next step, which is owning your career. So when we talk about owning our career, there really isn't like a one size fits all kind of thing that I can give you that says, here you go, here's a folder, follow these steps and you're going to be able to own your career. Everybody's career is different. And if you've read any of our EY Megatrends reports, you'll see that we've talked about the fact that the longer we live, the more digital disruption there is, there's actually opportunity for people to have several careers within their lifetime. So it's about constantly learning, evolving, understanding what it is, where it is that you're going, and where you can add value, and whether that's, you know, starting off in a tech firm, ending up in a consulting firm, starting up in a consulting firm, ending up in federal government, whatever that career looks like for you, it's about focusing on having control of that and utilizing the tools and methods that you have available to yourself to be able to shape that career. Melissa?
Yeah, look, that absolutely agree with that. I see there's a reference there to building and actively managing your brand. So managing your personal brand is important. And somebody once told me is you should always be thinking about your elevator pitch, which is effectively, if you get into an elevator, you've got a minute to tell somebody what it is you do, and you've got to make it interesting, insightful. So instead of just saying, I value things, you might say, you know, I've sold $1 billion worth of companies in the past 10 years or something. I mean, that seems really silly, but, you know, how do you describe what you do and who you are in a minute? And that's your elevator pitch. And obviously it can change over time, but I think that's something that is useful to think about.
Absolutely. And I've always found that the best elevator pitches that I've actually given focus on my values, and they focus on why I do the things I do rather than a shopping list of what I've done, because the shopping list of what you do actually changes more frequently than why you do things. So if your elevator pitch is focused around, I want to work in the not-for-profit sector because I want to make a difference to the lives of the homeless, or, you know, I want to work in consulting because I want to build a better working world through changing policy and programs for federal government. That's the kind of elevator pitch that you can memorize, and that changes less frequently than the last piece of work I did was X. So that's another little tip for you, that 30-second elevator pitch, refining that constantly is a really good way to own your career in your own mind, but also communicate it effectively to other people. Which brings us to the next one, W, which is widening your network. So once you do have that elevator pitch and you want to refine it and test it out on other people, where do you actually go? How do you widen your network? Now, when I was younger, this was a lot harder. We didn't really, again, showing my age, I didn't know about LinkedIn until I was kind of a fair way in. So a lot of the places where I would network and connect would be face-to-face. It would be on panel discussions, it would be in events, it would be in networking events that recruitment agencies ran and things like that. Nowadays, it's so much easier to get on things like this, to go onto Zoom calls, to get onto LinkedIn. So one of the ways that you can widen your network is really use LinkedIn. It is a very powerful tool. There are a lot of people on there. If you decide that this is the career that you want, or this is the pathway that you want to take, it's very easy to go and find out what are the organizations that work in this, who are the top people in those organizations, what do their career paths look like, and what messages can I take from there? How do I connect with them? Is it a matter of sending a message? Is it a matter of showing up to a panel that they're presenting at? So there's a lot of ways that you can widen that network. Melissa?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I've been very lucky at EY, you know, to be able to present at various things as a speaker or as an organizer or an attendee. And it's an excellent way to talk to the people around you, find out what they do. You know, you're learning their elevator pitch as well. And, you know, you can never not know enough, too many people. So always look out for new connections, find things in common, and get a reason to contact that person again. These are all helpful things, and you just have to be unashamed sometimes about putting yourself out there.
Absolutely. And I think you should absolutely not be afraid to ask for help. This is me, I'm young, I'm trying to enter this workforce in this area, can you help me? Everybody started out somewhere, and everybody hopefully remembers what it felt like when they were starting out. And so no one's going to, unless they're having an absolutely bad day, no one's going to, you know, refuse you to your face or anything like that. And even if they do, that's one person, and it says a lot more about them than it does about you. So don't let that stop you from asking, from reaching out for help. And again, projecting yourself authentically means more times than not, people will reach out and help you in return. Has anyone had any bad experiences with networking?
I actually wanted to share mine, but it's not a bad one.
Okay, no, please go for it.
So 1.5 years ago, I've actually literally brought my suitcases and moved across the globe to settle in Australia. I'm originally from Egypt. So I came here with no job, didn't know anyone or anything. But I've been working at Ernst & Young, PwC, Deloitte, and I did a bit of commerce as well. But I never burned any bridge with the people I've worked with before. So I've had all of them either on Facebook or on LinkedIn. So when I moved here, I wanted to rejoin Ernst & Young again. So I actually reached out to the assurance leader in the Middle East, the one that I used to work with. And he's the one who actually referred my CV to Ernst & Young Adelaide office. And one of the things I've done as well was like, I've started adding people at Ernst & Young Adelaide office in assurance and other divisions. And then when I moved here physically, I started sending them across my CV. And by the way, this is how I got the interview and the job at Ernst & Young Adelaide. So networking is very crucial and important. And as you mentioned, Shafeen, like, do not actually feel shy or embarrassed to reach out or anything. Whenever some people reach out to me, I'm gladly just answering their questions and try to share their experience. And the general thing is, like, everyone will try to help you as much as they can. So
yeah, exactly. Nobody's ever going to say to you no, and that's it. Even if it is a no, it'll be, oh, sorry, I can't help you, but here's somebody who might be able to. So even if one door closes, another will open up. So don't be disheartened by that. Thank you for sharing, Sally. If we move on to the next one, E, elevating your communication. Now, I find this is one that we all have something to learn from. So a fair way into my career, even I think I think this was when I was at NOW, so about 5 years ago, I realized, and somebody pointed this out to me, I was starting almost every single email of mine with just checking in, just following up, just wanting to make sure. And then, so when somebody pointed it out, I went through my emails that I got from my male colleagues. Not a single one of them used just. Why was I using just? And so when I start taking just out of my emails, following up to say, checking in to say, wanting to see, it sounds the same. Why did I put just in there? And a lot of the times you'll see females use extra words, and we do this because we are more empathetic. I do genuinely believe that most women are more empathetic, and we're more mindful of others' times. And so when we feel like we're encroaching on other people's times, we kind of add those adverbs. I'm sorry, but, oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but. And what that does is, especially in a professional setting, it does tend to undermine us. It really does. So unless it's absolutely warranted, I would take those words out. And you can absolutely have a firm, diplomatic, friendly tone without using words like that. So instead of thinking about how often do you start your sentences with "I'm sorry, but," think about starting them with "Hello, how are you? I am checking in too," or "I am following up with," instead of using the kind of words that immediately, unconsciously might put you on the back foot because you're already apologizing for something. Melissa, what's been your experience?
Oh, yes, I would be very guilty of doing some of these things. So it's really good to have a refresher here to not do them. The other thing that I notice is when women will finish their sentences on a very upwards intonation, as if it's a question. And I'm trying to do it now here deliberately, and I notice, Shafeen, you don't ever do that. So that gives you a real, your communication seems very sincere, but also incontrovertible. You found, to me, it sounds like you really know what you're talking about, because you're not ending every single question or every single sentence on a kind of upwards tone, which actually undermines what you're saying, because it makes it sound like you're just questioning everything. And so, yeah, be mindful of speaking with that intonation heading upwards at the end of your sentence. Try and keep it down and bring your sentences to a natural close.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for pointing that out. And I think, some people are naturally inclined to be better at some things than others. And so don't measure yourself by comparing yourself to other people. You are your own yardstick. Remember that, and compete against yourself. That is the best, most authentic competition you will ever have. If you progress against your own personal best, it will keep your mental health healthy as well. So remember that. Anyone want to share anything about communication? Any funny, funky stories?
I
think.
Sorry, Sarah, did you want to share?
Sorry, yes, sorry, I thought someone else was talking at the same time. Yeah, I was going to say it's quite interesting. I think there's a balance to be had on it as well, because I am through my career, by virtue of a couple of different males that I've known in a couple of different organisations, have been given advice to so similarly to removing the just, but almost going to the extreme of that, and actually wording up in emails in such a way that actually I viewed them as coming across as quite rude, but in a way that, the individuals that gave me this advice, that might have been their tone of voice. And I kind of took it on board at that point in time, because they were saying you need to be much, much more assertive and much more forthcoming with this kind of communication. And actually it just wasn't in my nature to be quite as brash as the tone of voice of the emails. Took it on board for a period, and then realized actually there's a balance to be had there, that you don't need to, unless it's in your nature, you don't necessarily need to go so overboard that it's kind of beyond your own personality just to prove yourself. So I think it's trying to work out what actually works for you, where it's, it's genuinely yourself.
Because it's not authentic then, and that's very exhausting to be non-authentic all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what? We might be giving you 10 things here. You don't have to do all 10 things, because that might be overkill, So if you pick up one or two that are authentic to you. The other thing is, a lot of these tips may feel like to you that we're suggesting, or they're advising that, to pick up more masculine traits. Like we said, stand up, project your voice, that intonation. I know it sounds like that, and sometimes when you are in a room full of men, and trust me, I have been there, where I've been the only woman, the only person of color, the only person wearing a hijab in a room full of 30, 40, 50 men, it does feel like you kind of have to give away part of you know, your femininity or your empathy to kind of make yourself be heard, but those are increasingly few and far between. So remember, there's a reason why the very first thing here was projecting yourself with authenticity. Only do what parts of this feel authentic to you, but make sure that it's all about projecting your most authentic self. And for all of us, regardless of what your personality is like and which career you want to advance in, there is a lion inside of us. Make sure that you let her roar. So that's really going to bring us to the last slide here, which is about realizing your purpose. If you realize what it is that you want to do with your life, with your career, where is my value? What are my value sets? What are my principles? What drives my integrity? And how do I fold that into my career? That's when you'll most likely be able to project yourself with confidence and let that inner person roar, whether it's in a room full of like-minded people or whether it's in a room full of people that, you know, kind of view you as an adversary and you have to win them over, because there are definitely points in everyone's career where you have to do that. It's really about finding what makes me tick, what makes me get out of bed, and trying to find the career or pathway that will help fold that in so that it makes you excited to get out of bed every day. What do you think, Melissa?
Yes, look, I totally agree. So I think a purpose-led organisation is going to be a very powerful organisation, and that's what EY is working towards. You know, we are purpose-led. I think if you're a purpose-led person, you're going to go very far because you will use that as your internal barometer to guide your decisions. And ultimately, you know, you will feel very comfortable with where you're at. So that should be your guiding barometer. And the challenge is figuring out what it is, you know, that really inspires you and what you value, and that's your purpose. And you should always follow that and be true to it.
Absolutely, thank you. Well, I guess this wraps up our session, and I notice we're at time. The next slide really just shares some mentee instructions, and you're going to go into the next session. But I hope that this day, and you're wrapping up soon, has been useful for you. I hope some of the tips and tricks that we've shared from our own careers and our own journeys have been useful to you. But if you find that authentic voice within yourself and nurture it, that is the best thing you can do for yourself. So good luck with that.
Thank you so much, Shafin and Melissa. Thanks so much for your time. So if you want to put in your key takeaways from this PowerUp session, that will be good on Menti, and I'll show the slide in just 1 minute. And I also learned so much from Shafin and Melissa myself, so I tend to say sorry a lot in my emails or just checking in, so maybe I'll just take note of that myself.
Nice work. Okay, bye guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
If you're able to see the screen, Menti screen now, so we have a few key takeaways. Recognize your values, adjust your language, back yourself to realize your own authenticity. Oh, we've got a lot here. You are capable of more than what you think. The importance and advantage of being proud of all you are, unapologetically. That's so true. Know your elevator pitch. Stand up for yourself.